These are 5 things I wish I knew before getting into bourbon. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So I've been in the whiskey hunting, sipping, collecting game for over 3 years now. And when I started my channel, I really knew basically nothing. I think at the point I started, I had maybe 10 to 12 bottles, somewhere in that range. And I wanted to really document my journey, how I would go from not knowing that much to when I fully dived in and started building a collection, what I could get and what I could learn. I hadn't seen a lot of channels that had kind of mapped that full journey, and so wanted to dive into that space. Along the way, I've certainly had moments of triumph where I've gotten great bottles or found something I particularly love, and moments of frustration and definitely some mistakes made along the way. So ultimately, I wanted to distill a list today of 5 things I wish I had known getting into the journey that ultimately wouldn't maybe change a whole bunch, but they would change my perspective or my attitude or the way I looked at things. So whether you've been in the whiskey game for decades, maybe some of these will still resonate with you or help you change your mindset a little bit. Or if you're just getting into bourbon and collecting whiskey, these might help you inform your journey a little bit better than maybe mine was when I first started. That's the hope. So hopefully you'll sit back, relax, sip on a great bourbon with me as we kind of talk through this list. All right, number one on my list of 5 things I wish I knew before getting into bourbon is you don't have to spend more than $30 to get a great whiskey. So I've actually got a great bottle I've had from the very beginning, not this bottle, but I've replaced it, and it's under 30 bucks. And it's got a great brown sugar, peanut butter, cinnamon spice kick to it. Cheers. Yeah, that's just good stuff. And it's Wild Turkey 101, easily less than 30 bucks. You'll often see it for more like 20 to 25. So when I first began collecting, I kind of gave myself price caps. I started at $30, only got stuff under 30 bucks. Then I went to 40 and 50 to kind of see what that opened up and explore some more stuff. And that price kept increasing. But as I reflect back, it was a good idea to start at under 30. And ultimately, there are bottles under 30 that I still think are really great, well-rounded, just enjoyable whiskeys. And that's just a great reminder that if you're staring at a $150 bottle on the shelf and you got the money to spend to grab it, great, and you want that bourbon, awesome. But ultimately, there are $30 bottles that are still really, really good. So you don't have to just get the expensive stuff to get great whiskey, which is good news for all of us. Okay, so number 2, available brands can be just as good as allocated whiskey. So you've got available brands out there like Old Forester, their Whiskey Row lineup. 1910 in particular, 1920, awesome, and always there on the shelves. 1792 small batch, I really like. We just talked about Wild Turkey 101. Heaven Hill, I love Elijah Craig. Their bottled in bond has become a lot more available, and that is a phenomenal bourbon. So available brands are still putting out great stuff. In terms of allocated bottles, there are some that are absolutely spectacular. The chase, the thrill of trying to find them is still a lot of fun for me, and I do love the hunting experience. But the reality is I compare all the allocated bottles I have to the available ones, and oftentimes the available ones can go head to head with some of the allocated buys that I've made. Now, caveat to that is some of the allocated bottles I have are the best bottles I have, and that's just getting lucky and being in the right place at the right time to get them. But that doesn't mean available brands aren't still putting out great whiskey. And I highlighted in particular just a bonus aspect to this is craft whiskey. So whether there's craft options near you that, the distilleries nearby and you can kind of get whatever they release. I have the privilege of living in northern Kentucky right near New Riff. So anytime they release something new, I can pretty much get my hands on it. And some of their bottles are some of my favorite stuff. So if there's availability of craft whiskey near you, don't overlook that either. Okay, number 3. This is kind of a fun one. That is, people will look to you as the bourbon guy or gal in their lives. So it's just kind of interesting how this has happened. I mean, obviously I have a YouTube channel, so that broadcasts it pretty publicly. But the people in my life, my friends and family, have started to look to me as the bourbon guy that they know. So when they're trying to get somebody a gift in the bourbon world, they'll text me or call me and say, hey, what should I get for 50 or 60 bucks? When they have questions about whiskey, they come to me and ask them. And ultimately, that is so fun. Like, I've gotten to do tastings with my family, run my friends through different stuff, and it's been a joy. And I love sharing what I have, and I love sharing just the world of whiskey and getting people interested. But it's just a fascinating thing that I kind of wish I knew is, like, once you get into it, it's kind of unavoidable that people look to you as the bourbon person in their life. And that comes with lots of questions and people being interested and wanting your recommendation, which can make you feel a little special, but it is an interesting thing that happens. All right. Number 4 on my list is explore the whole world of whiskey, not just bourbon. So I started as a primarily bourbon guy. My channel is called The Bourbon Hutch, and I still love bourbon probably primarily. I often compare bourbon to coffee when I talk to people. That's like, I love coffee. I love the roasty, toasty, darker, richer flavors of coffee. Especially if you're getting like a caramel macchiato or something, like that's bourbon to me. It's in that category. Versus something like rye is more like tea, herbal, maybe a little spicy, citrusy, can have those elements. I really love the bourbon profile, just like I really love coffee. But that's not the only good drink out there, right? So as I've gone more and more into some international stuff like Irish whiskeys, I've tried some scotch. Still not a huge fan of scotch. So maybe if you have a recommendation for a scotch for me to try as a bourbon lover, let me know. But what I've really found is, in particular, I've fallen in love with rye. And that's a whole category I had almost dismissed from the beginning because I had a couple of ryes that I didn't love. Turns out, rye is awesome. I was just thinking about it, the collection that I've had over the last couple of months, the whiskeys I've brought in, over half of them I think have been ryes. And that goes to show you that I've just started to explore it and love it even more. And I have a sneaking suspicion that if you really do like bourbon, you'll tend to like a certain number of ryes at least. So if you're tempted to just limit yourself to only bourbon because that's what you fell in love with first, all I would say is don't be afraid to explore the whole world of whiskey. All right, my last tip here, certainly not least though, is FOMO is real, but missing out is inevitable. So the fear of missing out, that's what FOMO is, and honestly, it is very real and very hard to resist in the bourbon world right now. Obviously, I have a YouTube channel, so I'm showing off bottles that I get. I get that that could contribute to some people feeling like there's bottles they can't get. Obviously, other channels are doing the same. People are posting, you'll see Facebook pages of this distillery just released this, I got this bottle, or this store has this, I got the last one. And ultimately, if you're always thinking about, oh man, I didn't get that chance, I wasn't in the right place at the right time, it can be pretty disappointing. What I think helps is admitting to ourselves and acknowledging the reality that we are going to miss out on the vast majority of bottles. We're going to miss out on the vast majority of releases and opportunities to get great stuff. And that's okay. Every once in a while, you'll be in the right place at the right time, you'll have the right connection, and then you can really cherish it. But with how crazy the market is and how many people are hunting bourbon these days, it's probably better to just accept that there's going to be a lot of things you miss out on. And once you accept that, you can just kind of embrace what you do have, be really grateful when you do get a new awesome bottle, and then also sip on it, share it, and enjoy it with the people in your life. So FOMO's real, but once we accept that we're going to miss out a lot, it becomes a little bit easier to appreciate what we do have. I know that sounds a little preachy. Hopefully this whole video didn't come across that way, but I just wanted to share that one because I wish I knew that. Ultimately, that's what I wish I knew, because I have multiple times throughout my journey allowed too much of my headspace, too much of my experience of bourbon to be negative because I didn't get certain bottles. And the truth is, I have plenty to share, plenty to enjoy, and I am very fortunate to have what I do have. So that's my list, everybody. Hope it's been helpful. Again, if you're just starting your journey, maybe keep these in mind as you go along, or if you've been doing it for decades, maybe these are a good refresher or resonate with you. Again, would love to hear in the comments below, what do you think of the list? And what are the things that you wish you knew before you got into the bourbon sipping and collecting game? While you're at it, consider hitting the like button. That's what gets it out to the most people. And then please also consider subscribing to the channel. For the rest of 2024 and beyond, I do plan to release a lot more great content for you guys. So that's going to wrap it up. The 5 things I wish I knew before getting into bourbon. There's more than just 5, but those are the 5 I wanted to highlight today. That's it, everybody. Until I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey and cheers.